Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForrest. Very happy to have you along for the ride. It's been a good one so far this week with our college basketball selections. Troy West, I mean, by the slightest of margins, a horse nostril right there on the wire. Came up with a couple of winners on the college basketball slate. Dropped one game, but we can forgive him that. 2-1, very good. Scotty M had his pick of the century. Louisville come through for us on Tuesday. So far, so good as we try to wade our way through the week and get to the conference championship games in professional football. But we've been immersed here in South Florida, and any degenerate would know this. Maybe one of the most difficult things to do. Racetrack people, especially, can relate to this. But anybody that's betting or has somebody that's losing constantly and always hitting you up for cash, it's very hard to unload a stiff in the degenerate world. Guy comes up every time you see him. He hits up for a 20. You don't feel like giving it to him, even though you just hit for 2,000. And you're like, I don't have any cash. All I have is this voucher. But you can't get rid of the guy. The next time you turn a corner, he sees you being paid off by a teller, and then boom, he's right there in your face. Hard to get rid of a stiff, but nowhere in the world is it more difficult to get rid of a stiff than it is in the NBA, the National Basketball Association. And the reason I mention this here in Miami, we're at the epicenter of what has been, I guess, the latest hot drama in NBA basketball. It's been going on for some time. But when you have Pat Riley, you're in a stare down with Pat Riley, you're probably going to lose. I would say that is an empirical truth. You're going to lose in a stare down with Pat Riley. So Jimmy Butler, disgruntled player, and he's been sulking, and one of those guys that, you have some little 8-year-old, you put him on a bench and he starts to cry, and you're like, come on. You got $50 million. Be responsible to the salary. I don't mean to sound like Robert De Niro in that movie, The Fan, where you're obsessed with saying, hey, you should have the motivation. I wish it was me out there, $50 million to play hoops. So it's hard to understand and relate to the common person to the idea that if somebody's paying you $50 million a year to do anything, let's go out there and do it. I mean, there's enough joy generated by the capital alone to make you think that it was worthwhile. And if it isn't, you have enough money to retire. But this has become some drama in Miami, especially. And right now, there's a lot of drama in Miami because current situation. I guess politically, I don't want to divide anybody or alienate anybody, but let's face it: the mailman knocks on your door, and everybody's diving under the bed here in this city. It's crazy. It's kind of like that movie. I don't know if you guys remember a movie, 3 Days of the Condor, when the mailman would show up and Robert Redford knew that this guy looks a little funky, a little fugazi. And all of a sudden he whips out a machine gun and he's drilling the entire home with bullets, trying to knock this guy off because he had some information that was about to become unfavorable to certain people that were in the high end of politics. But this Jimmy Butler thing, the Heat culture has been shattered, dismembered. As that was always one of those things, and it's hard to define. And people use that phrase; they throw it around. It's almost become cliche, heat culture. But I think it did represent something, maybe up until now. It was Pat Riley telling Shaq, "You know what? We're going to get your fat, lazy ass out of here. We got the championship, but it was only because Zoe came back from a kidney transplant. For God's sake, it wasn't because of you necessarily." And maybe his greatest deal as an executive, Pat Riley, the great Pat Riley. What was not the Shaq when he acquired Shaq, which was certainly instrumental in them winning a championship at least. But with Dwayne Wade, those teams with Dwayne Wade, what was that, like 2003? I think so. 2003. No, 2006. All right. So getting rid of Shaq, though, unloading a guy that looked like he was training at Taco Bell, looked like Oliver Miller at that point in his career. Now, he played a few more years after that. But getting rid of him was one of the greatest coups of Pat Riley's career. In this case, he's having trouble because in the NBA, I'm telling you, it's almost impossible to unload a stiff. Look what's going on. Phoenix wants Jimmy Butler. They've already had to make some a swap of draft picks with the Utah Jazz, who we didn't even know were part of the NBA anymore. They're so far at the bottom of the standings. And they're swapping picks in 2047. You're asking yourself, of what real significance will that be, so that they can clear space, so they can trade players. And now Phoenix has to try and unload Bradley Beal to the Milwaukee Bucks. They're telling them to stick it up their ass. And this is all to get rid of a stiff. You should be able to say to a guy, hey, listen, Mike Jones, you want to take my paycheck and perform the responsibilities we signed you to do? You're gone. Have you had that problem? I mean, it's like there's always that guy, like I said, at the racetrack that you're thinking, okay, I don't want to see Larry the Leaper today. So I'm going to go to a place that I never frequent when I'm at the track. I'm usually at this one bar there, whatever. In this case, it would be the Breezeway Bar at Gulf Street Park. I'm going to go hang out at the carousel where the hoity-toity people hang out. You'll never find me there. And then who walks in with some guy in a tuxedo? Larry DeLeaper. You got to be kidding. You can't get rid of these guys. But I might imagine you're following this Jimmy Butler saga. You being old school like me, you probably have not a lot of patience for the guy who's just become a petulant child. Maybe not quite as freaky as a Kyrie Irving was with a couple of teams that he was on, although he may have had an epiphany of some sort because you hear nothing about him being disgruntled and or unhappy in Dallas, and he's playing very well. But what do you make about? I mean, shouldn't you be able to get rid of a guy when you want to get rid of him?
You would think, but I think what we're seeing in the NBA over the last decade is the players run the league. I can remember, not to quote a friend, but I will in this point, that, and again, what I could say here might be true, might not be true, but it came from a source who knew somebody. And it was like when Adam Silver makes a decision, he runs it by LeBron. So if you really think that, the owners know that their brand goes worldwide and LeBron is part of that brand, does it become about the money or does it become about what's right, ethical, and all that? I've known Pat Riley for a long time, met him on numerous occasions when he's with the Lakers, the Knicks, and the Heat. Actually accused him of following me in my life that coming down here. And he's a great guy. We named our granddaughter after him. My son's infatuated him. I love everything about what he's done. Where he was, I rooted for. Rooted for the Lakers, Knicks. I've always been a Knicks fan and come here. I've always known that you really don't want to go heads up against him. And the guy's proven to have a track record. And, it's about the core of the team. It's not about this. Now, granted, like every other Phil Jackson, Pat Riley, you win with elite players. But what the Heat have accomplished with Jimmy Butler getting to the finals twice really has got to be a course on NBA miracles when you really think about it.
Sure.
And now you have a situation where Jimmy might think that they're relying a little bit more on Tyler Hero. Maybe Bam moved in. But I watched Inside the NBA when all this was going down, and I respect those three guys and Ernie Johnson a lot. And when the question went to Shaq about dealing with Riley, he said that Riley came to him in 2006 and said, you could take 20 million or you could take 10 and we can get the pieces and win a title. And he proved the point and won. And granted, he had Dwayne Wade and they brought in some extra pieces and did what they had to do. But he said it's about, you can answer that question, what's more important? And then Kenny Smith asked Charles Barkley, would you give Jimmy Butler a 3-year, $180 million extension what he's looking for? The guy's 35 years old. He's not the A player that you're going to win with, I don't think. I love him. My kids we all love Jimmy Butler. But when you start hearing it becomes a dissension and the guy's unhappy, we've gotten to a point, it's nothing but win a title. And maybe he looks at the core and what the Heat are doing and doesn't think they can win.
Doesn't look like.
Right? And then the next question is, what do you get in fair value? Because you have to match the salary cap. And if you don't think Pat Riley's trying to move him, I think we're crazy. He's got to be trying to move him, and he can't get the taker out there. Should tell Jimmy Butler where he's at. And I hope he sucks it up, and I hope he stays with it and realizes he likes South Florida and becomes, where he wants
to. That doesn't look like it's happening.
No.
This definitely looks like it's an impasse that can't be overcome. Let me get this in here before we get going, and there's a lot to talk about here with Mike Jones, who we're happy to have on the program again this week. And we've been zeroing in on a little college basketball. The boys are hot. You'll be happy to know. Scotty M came up with a beauty on Tuesday, and 2 out of 3, although we won both games by a half a point, according to the spreads that we selected them on Troy West yesterday. So been having some fun with that. Bet Online, though, would be the place to make all of your bets. Never forget the commercial, though, Mike Jones. That's always a mistake in broadcasting. Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting, from the earliest odds to in-game live betting, which is now your thing. And we were talking about this on Monday. I need to school myself and groom myself to just start forgetting about sides and totals, and going all in on absurd prop bets and, of course, in-game betting. Because, when you've watched sports your whole life, you have a fairly good idea. Once in a while you'll be completely surprised that, they ran the ball on that play.
Right.
But a lot of this stuff is fairly predictable, isn't it? And you're sitting
Yeah.
on your hands. We should be punching away on Bet Online and making score after score. They have the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball. They do it all, UFC, boxing, all kinds of stuff. Bet Online, the game starts here. But yeah, I don't see this being resolved in any kind of a favorable fashion. I mean, what's weird, like I said, to get rid of a stiff in the NBA, trading draft picks with Utah, and then after you do that, you offer Bradley Beal to the Milwaukee Bucks for like Antetokounmpo's brother and cash, and then the Heat have to get involved with three other teams.
Right.
You can't lose this guy.
No.
It's a noose hanging around their neck, and it seems openly defiant of this whole idea of Miami Heat culture, which we've bought into forever here.
Mhm.
And you think of Miami Heat culture as like Clubber Lang, in some dingy dungeon-like gym that maybe Papillon wouldn't have even thrown some punches in. And he's getting ready while you're out there on the chicken circuit. The rest of the league is, out there on South Beach. No wonder the Heat are always great at home, huh? Did you ever
Right.
see Allen Iverson show up at any of those shoot-arounds when South Beach first opened up? Never.
Yep.
Where's AI?
Leave Orlando back to back. You come down here, quick flight. You land at 12:30, and you don't have to go to the hotel room. So whenever you had Orlando,
Probably don't even book a hotel.
right, coming out of back to back to Miami, you always like to eat the next night because you figure the team's going to get down here. And it's like a mini Vegas here, so party wise. So it's like we're going to come down and get distracted for a night, and you win some, you lose some. But that's how it does. I will say this about college basketball. Let's talk Miami real quick.
What an embarrassment this was.
Last night I had Stanford -11, and I've watched Miami now a couple times, and the SMU first half when they're down 32 at the half Saturday kind of opened my eyes to what I saw. And you got to look at one of my partners in handicapping says it's a psychological mindset. People don't look at the psyche of the game. Don't worry about the spread and the team's covered 10 times. I want the psyche. And one of the things he said to me, when I looked at was, why did Jim Larinaga leave? NIL, not being able to recruit. Kids aren't being responsive. He's 70s in his 70s. Can't relate. Maybe there was something more there. They haven't covered a game, and they're getting blown out. And Stanford's not a great team. And I'm watching this game, and I said, it's a 1-0 after. And I turn it back before I could get a live bet in. And it was 11-1. And it went south from there. They lost by over 30.
Yes.
They got Cal Saturday. I'll throw it out here right now. It doesn't matter what the spread is. It'd probably be less than 20. I take a shot until you see them cover. Get on a streak and go against Miami. It's a bet against, not a bet on. But until I start seeing that the effort's there, they let guys get in the paint. I'm watching them defensively. Just lack of energy, guys shooting, no movement of the ball. And I think it's a tough spot that these kids are in because Miami had the successful run 2 years ago. And you're in that situation where your kids come in and think they're going to win, and then coach leaves, attitude goes south. Let's see if Miami can respond. But until then, I'm going to go against them and take some bet and make some money.
You're like surfing mavericks out there on the West Coast. That's what I love about you, Mike Jones. You see something, and this is not straight up numerology. And we have many people that they're always citing numbers, and
Right.
I have great respect for them and those systems. Our good friend, a mutual friend of ours, the great Mark Lawrence, world championship handicapper, who I believe he's appeared on Bury Your Bookie once. And he is strictly a trends guy. I mean, has these trends mapped out and quantifiers that you would never even dream of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. That works for him. But you go by a little bit of the eyeball treatment here. You're watching races over and over and over again and saying, "You see that 6? He was trapped on the inside. Cost him 2 links.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he jogs." So that's a good trend, and it's based on the fact that there's devastation. I couldn't believe it. I mean, the scores are stunning.
Yeah.
I haven't followed it. I was a huge Jim Larinaga fan, and he was a frequent guest on all of the shows we did, whether we were doing radio or the streaming shows. And just a beautiful guy to talk basketball with. He's a basketball treasure chest.
Right.
I don't know if he's interested in it because he is. He must be 75, maybe.
Yeah, a little less, 72, 73. Yep.
I think he's a little older than I am. So and I'm one of the geezers at Caesars. Which, by the way, I mentioned this earlier in the week. We had an interview, and you probably know this guy, being of the New York sporting background that you are. We had a show on Bleacher Brothers, a platform that we have shows on, called Conversations with Jeff DeForrest, where I talk to people that I think have interesting stories to tell. So, or can give us an overview or a dissection of a sport that is kind of unique, maybe from a storytelling standpoint. So we ended up having as one of our guests Randy Gordon, who was with Ring Magazine forever and was a New York State athletic commissioner at one point in time. He did a lot of things in boxing. I worked with him a couple of times. And he brings on, because he has a Sirius satellite show, Jerry Cooney, gentleman Jerry Cooney, who could not have been any cooler. So if you get a chance, people just Google that, Conversations with Jeff DeForrest, and the most recent episode we dropped there, as they call it in the business, Randy Gordon. And we talk a lot of boxing, including we did have some video of a fight that we both happened to be at by completely different approaches. I happen to be friends with the guy that was in the title fight when they kicked off the opening of South Beach, as you said, the Heat 12th man, or whatever it is, sixth man. And they started it with a boxing match. And one of my friends from California I used to cover, was very close with, was fighting in a world title fight. And in the middle of the fight, sheets of rain start pouring through the ring. I mean, this was like hurricane force winds. The lights are collapsing. The ring is shaking. Everybody's running for cover there. And Randy, it turned out, was calling that fight on some television outlet. So, it was great. So that was part of the show. And then Jerry Cooney came on, and
That's great.
I recommend people take a look at that. All right, let's get into it. So you're diving into college basketball. You've given us something to watch.
Something to watch.
It's going to be a bet against Miami is money in your pocket. Now you can ride that. What? How long would you ride that until it doesn't work?
Yeah, I mean, you got to ride to the other.
Loss, would that dissuade you from doing it, or do you think
maybe not? Maybe not. The eye test will tell me more. They made a tough game. I mean, the other night I had them minus 12.5 against Duke. Duke minus 12.5 on the road, and that's when I noticed set one. And then watching them SMU Saturday was pretty rough. And then you're watching, we're checking the schedule now. I'm paying more attention to it. Oh, they're going out west to play Stanford and Cal. Well, that's not an easy place to go, and cross country, distraction, all that, fires, everything out there. When you start, this is just what I've been around losing, and as a fan, as a gambler, everything. It gets catchy. It becomes addictive. Can you come out of it? Is there can the new coach bring them out? Is he going to make them work harder, find something?
It doesn't look that way.
No, and so I
away.
I don't think I'd be deterred after the first one, but it's not a double up type situation. So I'm not sitting here with money and going to double until it loses. But I just think it's something for
what a tragic decline, though. I mean, they were a Final Four team, one of the most exciting stories that we've seen, certainly in South Florida, and it was just great and a revelation, of course, because Larrañaga had been there in the Final Four before with George Mason, a very improbable entry, and that's kind of where he made his name for himself, and we were very happy to have him here, and he brought about good results.
Yeah,
it was a real solid guy. He was another one of those coaches, though. I mean, it's easy to point this out, but in talking to him before this really took hold, and we saw where it was going to go, and what kind of just open, chaos it's created. Is this name, image, and likeness thing? He knew, and the transfer portal.
Yeah,
we're going to be beyond transformational in terms of the scope of how to approach this, and he seemed to be very cautious and sort of pessimistic about how it was going to go for him personally, and then somehow he caught magic through the transfer portal, got that team to the Final Four, but then they all transferred out.
Right. Well, last night one of the big things with the transfer portal is I look at schools where the money's coming from.
Yeah.
I got a very close friend that's involved closely with the Big 12, and he tells me that, Texas has got a ton of money. Tells me all the schools that have it. And one of the schools in the SEC, which has a lot of money, and I'm trying to watch them in football, but I'm starting to watch them in basketball. They won their first SEC game last night, is Arkansas. Tyson Foods, Walmart. He's telling me that right now, if you're in major college sports, you're recruiting boosters, not players. The players are going to have an agent. They're going to find you. They're going to hear you got, Publix to come on and give a certain amount of money. And as soon as they find that out, the agent will find you and they'll find that coach and say, okay, how you can disperse the NIL money. And I think that's what Larrañaga got upset about. I think when you see a guy of his character, his success, walk away mid-season, something's up.
That would be the last thing you would anticipate from
right. And that's when I started thinking, maybe this Miami thing could be something you can go at. So there's so many ways. Again, we get to the psychological part of betting. That's what I would think. I would look at this, and immediately I saw the Duke first half. Then I saw the SMU. Now I'm seeing Stanford 3 straight. And now I'm like, okay, how far can we take this? When do the price makers come out and figure out what I'm seeing? I might get 2 more weeks out of it. That's what I'm hoping.
Nevin Shapiro's out of jail. Maybe that'll help.
Yeah, right.
I
Yeah,
think Biden pardoned him. He
yeah,
was trying to, put
like
down the
that.
thing on his son, and instead it was like, oh yeah, let me let this cat out of jail.
Maybe like that. Yeah,
I mean, we want to get into some stuff here.
yeah.
So do you want to pick a college basketball game on the slate tonight? I don't have the ledger in front of me because
I'm going to do something I've never done before, and especially out in public.
tennis.
I'm going to pick Cal without knowing the line. I'm going to go Cal against Miami Saturday and wait for that game and say it's a 6 o'clock start. I think East, and yeah, I'm
Fletching.
going to take my
Okay.
chances.
That's bold. That's what we love about you, Mike Jones.
Don't
You're
even
not
know.
going to,
Making
butt
back.
down and call your accountant. You're just
Yeah,
sending it in blindly on
yeah.
Cal, as if you were playing Caribbean stud poker. Remember that game? That was always
Mhm,
a game that you thought the
mhm.
casino had a huge advantage in. Even if you won, like you could win tons of money in that game and blow it back plus in a matter of seconds. Because what do you mean you don't qualify? I've got aces, 4 of them.
Right.
Oh my
No,
fucking god!
no.
How many times that happens to me though? I mean, I don't
Yeah.
have the greatest of luck in gambling, as people probably can witness from some of the
Both,
people I hang around with
both
and
of
the
us.
selections that we've made on the show. All right, let's get into some stuff. So you're advancing the bet on Cal against Miami, and that's a good theory because I don't know that I'm with you. What little I've seen of late of Miami basketball, basketball,
Yeah.
it has been beyond abysmal to the
Mhm,
point where you're stunned. You don't think the score is right. Like
mhm.
you're worried about your vision. You see 81-38, and you're like, what the fuck is that? That's bad. So, and no amount of points would dissuade you from betting Cal Saturday night, University of Miami, going against California on the hardwood. All right, you want to look into the
Yeah, let's
games?
let's
Let's get your
let's
thoughts on.
get to the fun weekend in the NFL. We started looking at the lines when they came out. I liked Philly right away. I was saying, wow, 4.5, kind of low. Now it's 6.5. I just look at this game like, again, it's, as I cringe to say this, it's a Saquon Barkley factor. It's just he just does things that no other back right now is doing. The breakaway runs. I mean, I think we were talking the other day about that run that he had to basically make it a 2 touchdown game. Was guys had angles on him and he ran right by him. It's
Didn't
looking,
it look too like he was winking at Jalen?
yeah, slapping himself in the arm. Knows
He-
that the game, knows he's getting to his first championship game. And again, I go back to like the Heat culture. I'm going to say that Saquon Barkley was a big culture guy, more than just letting him go talent wise. I think he was a leader in our locker room. And I think that's where you miss the player that he is. As much as he's a great performer, may have been hurt a couple times. You get this. I look at this factor this way. Jalen Hurts is maybe a little banged up. I think he limited in practice yesterday. Where do they go? Yes, when he got hurt in the previous Washington game down there, well, that Washington won. They relied on him a little bit with Pickett, and they had to make adjustments. They're going to be more prepared. It looks like Hurts is going to be a go. I just find that the stats are telling me this. If the analytics go back, this is the 6th time that rookie quarterbacks get into the championship game. They're 0-5, dating back to Sean King in 2000 and most recent Brock Purdy with the 49ers. Tough spot. Not that there's pressure on Washington because of where they are and what they've gotten, that they should be loose. They have a great veteran leadership that they brought in this year. But the fact that Philly offers a different animal, both on sides of the front of the lines. I think they're going to apply some pressure to him. Sal Cosme, their leading guard, their best lineman is out, got hurt in the Detroit game. I think that could cause a little bit of an issue. I'm not thrilled with the line. I've been betting against these line moves. I think if I see 7, I probably would get a little bit worried. But I think Philly, at least maybe money line and probably spread would be my bet in that game.
All right. See, I'm such a sucker. I mean, I shouldn't be hosting a show like this because I'm caught up a little bit in the Cinderella story, and the wanderlust that goes along with Jaden Daniels, who many of my friends that are draft nicks and get heavily into analyzing and scrutinizing picks both before and after. They were not big fans of Jaden Daniels. They thought that he was the least likely to succeed of some of the quarterbacks that were coming out in this year's draft. Now, we have seen others succeed, at least to some degree. Certainly, Bo Nix would qualify. Drake May, the record sucked, but people saw some signs of life in him. But Daniels was just amazing. I mean, it was like watching Dan Marino when he came in his rookie year for David Woodley, and you said, holy shit, we got a quarterback. Even Shula, who was probably 2 steps away from his grave back then, all of a sudden was revived, and he lived to the ripe old age of 90 something.
Yeah.
Just based on the fact that this guy had, he had it, he had something. Daniel seems to have that. Does it equate out to being willing to take 6.5 points? I mean,
it does.
The old song, the Beatles song, "I'm a Believer," but I'm not convinced completely that what you're saying is not exactly the prescription where Saquon Barkley controls the action. They don't need so much from Jalen Hurts. They get just enough. And the Vic Fangio factor comes into play there, where the Philadelphia defense has really been as much of the story as Saquon Barkley.
Right.
They've played well, and they've come up big in spots where they had to. And you're not seeing teams put up big totals of points on them, except for the fact that, the last time they played Washington, they had, 33 points, which was pretty remarkable. So, tough call. I mean, I respect your pick of Philadelphia. I'm just because I can't resist taking a little bit of a price. I probably am tempted to take the 6 and a hook with the Washington Commanders in this game.
And I get it. These are tough games. The last year I had a really good feel. I'm 9-2-1 in the playoffs.
You're on fire.
If you're gonna ride something, I've been pretty good on the show. I mean, I just look at it like now it becomes to me the trenches. I'm a trench guy. Everybody likes quarterbacks and everybody wants all that. And you listen to Magic Johnson on video say they got their quarterback. That's how they can go in and win the game against Tampa. And then they go up there and looks like he's not the quarterback on the fourth down play. They go down 7-0. You think floodgates are going to open up, and this kid seems to make play after play. And the vulnerable Detroit defense, which has been hurt all year, and people question, would they get enough pass rush? Would they get about this? And then he puts up a 45 spot on you. I mean, I just don't see that happening this week. I think Philly's going to be ready for this. They have more tape to watch. I think the 2 games of familiarity is not like Detroit had to see something for the first time. They know what they're going to get out of Daniels. I like their coaching staff. I'm very impressed with Dan Quinn. I'm very impressed with the leadership that they've brought in, the Zach Ertzes, the Bobby Wagners, the now Mark Lattimore. They got some linemen. But I just think that Philly's really tough on the offensive front. And I really like Philly's defensive inner defense, where I think Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis are 2 of the best interior tackles. I think they're going to cause a problem, especially with Cosme out. I think it's going to be one of these games. If leaning, I think there will be points scored. I think I think there was 60 scored in the last game. The total's dropping from 48 to 47.5. I mean, I might like them over bet here. I'm looking at Philly. I just think they're too strong and tough place to play. As my experience was in Philadelphia, I just think this is now. There wasn't pressure on him last week, and I'm sure the kid's handling it. And as a contrarian, I will say that I thought Daniels was the best quarterback in this draft. I think I would be right. I was very upset when he went to Washington, to defend my beloved Giants. Brian Dable said on the show if he had to pick a guy he wanted in the draft, it was Daniels. And I just look at it like now the 0-5 stat, now the pressure comes a little bit. Get to the Super Bowl early, and this would be the first one ever they may do that. Rookie to play to start the Super Bowl. Maybe it gets to him a little bit. I just think Philly probably wins the game and probably covers.
So much for Cinderella. Like the Man on the Mancho on this show here today. Dream, the impossible dream. All right, quick thought on the other game, which, tremendous intrigue, and obviously, according to the odds makers, figures to be the more competitive of the 2.
Right. Again, I go back where the pressure lies. So, to me, this is the different story. So, I thought last week the pressure, and I think we discussed this, was on Lamar Jackson. That he was the guy. They had the better team. They had the bigger back. They had been playing better. Their defense was right. First multi-game turnover game of the season. First time in 21. I think they've lost a turnover battle. And I'm, looking at it like, okay, now what happens? Now we go this week. We got a team like Kansas City just finds a way to win. They just do that. There was some stat that came out that they've won 21-1, and probably like 15 of them are 1-score games. They're not blowing up people. Games will be close. But then you see the line, and it's 1.5 and now 2. Like, wow, can't get 3 with Buffalo. Like, you kind of wanted them. So if you're reading the line, you say you got to like Buffalo thinking they're going to win. I'm kind of rooting for Buffalo. I don't have a real play to give one out. I'm probably going to take the Bills on the money line, say they pull the upset and stop the three-peat. Never happened before. But man alive, how do you bet against Patrick Mahomes at home? You've only lost one game, in the playoffs since he's been there. The first one, the championship game, I think, against New England was the only game the guys lost at home covered. So I just think this is a really, really tough game. I did like the under, thinking there would be less points scored, in this game, because I like both defenses. Thought the total was high, but that creeping down too. So people are thinking a lot like me. So I'm just rooting for Buffalo just to make a change of pace. It makes my household better, as my wife's tired of watching the Chiefs, so I'm going to let her pick this one and go Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm kind of rooting for Buffalo in this one too.
Yeah.
The two dogs. The dogs have been doing okay. They
Right.
have very favorable numbers so far in the postseason.
Right.
And that was in stark contrast to the regular season, where the chalk was prevailing to the tune of just outrageous proportions, and the bookmakers were a rare change. Were getting crushed. But yeah, I mean that trend. They always make it up in the end here. So look for the upsets, my friend.
Yep.
No, the Commanders, I would say, probably have less of a chance of winning that game outright than Buffalo has, obviously, in Kansas City. As indicated, it doesn't take a genius to deduce that by the point spreads. But I think Kansas City's been vulnerable all year. I just think when you win that many, short, differential games, eventually you lose one. It's just the law of averages. So here's Buffalo in there with a shot. I'm going to be rooting for them. I don't have an overwhelming opinion that they're going to win this game. I mean, it would be no shock if Kansas City won by 10 points, but I'm with you. Take a shot with Buffalo on the money.
I mean, the teaser bet to me would probably be my bet. I gave one out a couple weeks ago, and I'll give it out this week. Say, the percentages tell you to take the team over the 3 and 7 line. So you take Buffalo up to 8, and you take Philly to win. That would be my recommended bet. You got both games. You can only make one bet, but you got action on both games, and you get a little addition. If Philly wins, you got a little more than a touchdown. You feel pretty secure with Buffalo. You could always hedge. I mean, live betting could come out. You could watch the first quarter and see something happen. Who knows if Allen doesn't get hurt in the first series, and now we're sitting there thinking like what happened a few years ago with Brock Purdy. I just again though, but the pressure. They got to feel Josh Allen's got a little pressure on him. But I just think the expectations, again, people thought he could come in third in the division. They were a little less, and I thought he played better throughout the year. I think he's my pick for MVP, not so much Lamar, even though Lamar's numbers are there. And, I just think the addition of Derrick Henry made defenses change up how they played him. I thought clearly he was the best player on the field, even with the turnovers on Sunday. But, a lot of people I know who were down on Lamar are felt better about him in a loss moving forward for his career than they did, in his one game. So the pressure's going to be on Josh Allen. And I think maybe this is his time, and we'll see what happens. But I think Barkley gets to the Super Bowl for sure.
All right. Mike Jones, how do we find your advice? Because you do it one game at a time, which is great.
The picks are out there on BigGunnerPodcast.com. We are on Spotify, and we are red hot. We're 9-2-1 in the playoffs. So come get some free winners and stick with us.
I could use a little 9-2-1, man. That sounds sweet. That's like popping a cork on Bottle of Lafitte Rothschild, where I've been popping a cork on Bottle of Lafitte Pink Eye instead. All right, Mike, we love you, man. Thanks so much for being with us. Best of luck with your plays, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Great to be with you, Jeff. Thanks again.
All right, Mike Jones, ladies and gentlemen. So that was a lot of fun. I don't know if they'll resolve that thing, but people, maybe you've had this experience. It's very hard, especially for gamblers, to distance yourself from a stiff. And the Miami Heat are going through that with Jimmy Butler right now. And I don't think it's any more difficult than it might be. I mean, how convoluted are these formulas to try and unload a guy in the National Basketball Association? All right, we'll see you tomorrow, a Degenerate Friday edition of the program. We'll have the professor, maybe another edition of the Professor's Big Board. I'm sure it'll relate to something in the degenerate aspect of the sporting world. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for that. For the people at Bet Online, Greenlight Ventures, and NoFilter.net, I'm Jeff DeForrest. Thanks for watching today's edition of Bury Your Bookie.